Victoria 3 has a new DLC, The Great Wave, and it completely changes the game with tons of new mechanics. It will permanently change the game by deepening the warfare system and navy system, by adding the warship editor like in Hearts of Iron 4. It also adds flagship boats for your fleets, and also adds the ability to buy and sell ships via treaties. The Great Wave also adds gunboat diplomacy options, which essentially allow you to threaten other countries to get what you want without having to directly go to war with them by starting a diplomatic play, which I think has been very necessary to add because previously it just wasn't possible to play in a more diplomatic manner. And finally, the DLC also adds new historical characters and art to the game, as well as a ton of content for Japan, which has desperately been needed since the start of the game. So, is it actually worth your money, and is it even a good DLC? All that and more will be answered in this video. The Ship Designer. The Ship Designer works by selecting certain modules that affect how many different points, representing the different stats of the ship, a certain ship has. For example, a ship with starting tech in 1836 with light armor would have 25 armor points, which affects the defensive and offensive capabilities of said ship. In total, ships have armor, guns, propulsion, and supply capacity options that affect how long a ship can stay at sea, for example, which is dictated by the level of supply capacity. That adds a whole nother layer of strategy for naval combat. Of course, there are also plenty of different ship types, from destroyers to cruisers to battleships. All of them have different strengths, weaknesses, advantages, disadvantages, and of course prices. The exact prowess and capability of your ships is decided by how good you decide to build your ships, of course, but to unlock new ship types and capabilities, you must obviously research their respective technologies. The ship designer will also allow you to install wildcard modules to further improve your ship. I think these changes are amazing and so great for the future of the game, as it's a great step to see towards a decent warfare system in the game, which is something players have been asking for a very long time. It's so cool to see the devs finally listening to the player base by reworking at least part of the warfare system. In short, I also think the fact that the game is in now some aspects more historically accurate by letting the Navy play a larger role, since in the 19th century it didn't just matter who had the largest army, the size of different nations' navies also played a large, if not larger, role than the army. Ship purchase treaties. The new Ship Transfer Treaty article is a pretty cool extension to the treaty system by allowing different nations to transfer their ships to each other. So, for example, if you need certain ships in order to lift a blockade on your market capital, or if you're about to get navally invaded, or if you're just losing a war and need backup, having the option to be able to buy ships from allies, for example, is a huge lifesaver. Because if you've played Victoria 3 before, you'll know the pain of having to rely on your stupid AI allies if they happen to have a big navy in order to have naval support in a war. Currently, it seems that unless the AI nation is your puppet or a very close ally to you, they will be incredibly reluctant to trade ships with you, which makes this mechanic seem like it practically doesn't exist at certain moments, which means the devs definitely need to rework how the AIs see the treaties. Gunboat diplomacy. Gunboat diplomacy is yet another great addition to the game with these new diplo mechanics. They essentially allow you to influence and force other countries to do certain things, like, for example, to open Japan's market as the USA, or to get a nation to become your protectorate, or to get them to sign a treaty that you need. And all that without actually having to go to war with them. Instead, you just get your big navy to pull up next to their capital and do a big show of arms sting, and then you usually get them to agree to whatever you like. A very cool and very historical new mechanic. Japan content. And finally, the DLC also adds a great amount of content, aka journal entries and new achievements for Japan. This includes new ideologies, characters, and map changes to make everything more accurate. There are now also new nations in the Japan area. One of the new nations is Ryukyu, a small island nation previously a part of the Japanese shogunate directly. Now, however, they are a small nation with their own culture, content, and province that is a subject of Japan while also being codependent on Qing China. The second small nation is Ezochi, another small nation that's a subject of Japan. This time they're located on the southern tip of Sakhalin. Besides the new nations, Japan has received plenty of that really needed content that I already mentioned. Other changes. In other important news, the DLC also adds 2 new law categories, which if you play Victoria 3, you'll know that that's a really big deal. One of them is the Navy model, so alongside your Army model, you now also have a selection of laws that dictate how your Navy operates, which is fitting due to all the updates to the Navy that this DLC brings. The second new law type is one that's exclusively for Japan, and that's the Edo status system. It's a very cool new system that changes how classes work in Japan, but of course it's just for Japan. It's very similar to the caste system that all the Indian nations in the game have, so it kind of feels like a reskin, but it's still very cool. And last but not least, there has also been a massive overhaul to the map in Australia. Now, unlike previously, where rather ahistorically for 1836, the Australian colonies owned a lot more of the mainland. Now they only own tiny little bits of land around the coast, which, while more historical, is a bummer for people like me that loved playing Australia because now all the Australian colonies are obviously way weaker. Yeah, so those are all the new changes and mechanics to DLC and also partially the 1.13 update adds to the game. I hope you learned something. If so, then I'd really appreciate if you dropped a like and subscribed to my channel. Bye and see you in the next one.